Oh boy. Okay. Um let's get this one started. The Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe is a science fiction, fantasy, science fantasy. It's a dying Earth story set a long time in Earth's future. It's a first person memoir account written by our main character, Severian, as he starts from just a regular member of the Guild of Torturers and becomes the autarch of Earth. Other than that basic high level view, I don't know how else to describe this book, so I guess I'm just going to kind of talk about the experience of reading it and whether or not you can enjoy the Book of the New Sun purely on one single first read, because I think it's a highly debated about topic. Can you enjoy the Book of the New Sun on your first read? Because as the adage goes, you never read Gene Wolfe, you only reread Gene Wolfe. Now, I knew this going in. Obviously, this had a pretty big reputation, and I didn't know much about the plot, but I kind of knew that I was going to be confused while reading a lot of this because of that reputation. However, I also knew a little bit about it. I knew that the main Severian character was going to write the memoir. I knew that he was kind of an unreliable narrator. I knew he was a torturer at the start of the book, and I also knew that this is written like a fantasy, but really it's kind of a futuristic sci fi, but the book doesn't really tell you that. So, knowing all of that, is this going to be like a real review? I'm not sure. I don't know if I could properly review it. Will this be an incoherent, rambling video of me telling you what the experience of reading this book only one time is like? Yes, I think that's more accurate. Were I to give it like a review, I'd say it's weird, interesting, off putting, but engrossing and captivating and confusing. All of those things in once, but never for once is it ever boring. Never for once do you not want to keep going to see what's at the end of this tunnel. There's your review. Let's get into it. I'll just say maybe I might spoil things. I don't know. It's kind of hard to spoil this series because it's so weird that I don't actually know if that's even possible, but whatever. So I kind of wanted to do this video from the perspective of somebody who has just done one read and has not reread it, because I think that will help shed some light on what it actually feels like to have read this for the first time. Because I've seen a lot of videos of people answering the question whether or not you can, understand the plot and what's going on first read. But usually those are coming from people who have reread it multiple times, and usually those people will tell you things like, "Oh yeah, it's kind of weird, and you won't understand everything, but you can still enjoy it for the basic adventure travel plot, and you'll get all the deeper symbolism and all the religious undertones and all that stuff on your second read. But on your first read, just enjoy it as a straight travel journey adventure memoir book, and you'll be able to understand it just fine." Um, I'd kind of like to push back a little bit against that sentiment because I would say yes and no. And here's what I mean by that. Will you understand everything in the Book of the New Sun? No, obviously not. Will you understand more than you think you will about the Book of the New Sun on your first read? Yes, I do think that's true. I think you will. Will you understand a lot of the events taking place? I do think, yes, on some base level, you will understand kind of what you're reading. But even in the scenes that you're understanding, there's still so much confusion and weirdness and difficulties and barriers in your way, if that makes sense. So I've seen when looking at reviews from other people, they've talked about how Gene Wolfe has said that if you were to pick a book that's a companion piece to the Book of the New Sun, it would be the New Testament. Now, I think this is an apt description because I'd like to describe what I think it's like reading the Book of the New Sun for the first time. I think reading the Book of the New Sun for the first time is like if somebody went and found the Bible and completely read it, having never heard about any religion whatsoever, having never heard anything about the Bible, having no idea about the mythology there, and they just found the Bible and they just decided to read it as a straight narrative. In that sense, I completely understand why Gene Wolfe would make this comparison, because if you just read the New Testament or the Old Testament or the whole Bible completely free of that context and you just like read it as a narrative, I think it would be pretty similar to what it feels like reading the Book of the New Sun in many ways. The characters and the writing are very archaic. There's like a level of separation between the characters and the way we are in today's day and age, much like there's a disconnect between the people you read about, like in the Bible, because that's thousands of years ago. And same thing with this, because these characters are thousands of years in the future. And so they don't quite act like we humans today would act like. And that's kind of weird. The language is archaic. There's like an added gimmick in the Book of the New Sun that it's a translation from a future text. And so words that are used on the page are not actually what you're reading about at all. He will just substitute modern day words, but they'll mean something completely different, right? Like he'll use the word horse, but he's explaining a totally different alien species. And that takes a while for you to grok onto, much like how the Bible, you read it, it is also a translation from ancient languages. And so there's another degree of separation there in trying to interpret, things that are actually going on in the text. There's a lot of study and rereading you have to do in the Bible to understand, like, the whole story and what's actually going on there. Same with the Book of the New Sun. I feel like if you just read the Bible straight from front to back, I don't know if that would really, I think you would understand, right? Oh yeah, this Jesus guy, he got crucified, but you wouldn't understand the significance of that maybe on your first read or without further study. You know what I mean? And the same thing with the Book of the New Sun here. So I think that description is apt, and I think that helps me explain how weird it is reading the Book of the New Sun for the first time. Because just like if you had read the Bible for the first time completely free of context, yes, you could say that you would understand the plot of the Bible, but there's so much that you're missing. And even things that you understand, there's so much more going on, right, that a basic read won't do for you. Same thing with Book of the New Sun. Yeah, I could understand what I'm reading, but I do think that having that why is something happening, what is the deeper purpose here, is more important than I think some people give it credit for in their videos. Now, I'm not saying that you should always have the why or you should always have the subtext spelled out for you from the beginning, because I don't think that's true, obviously. But I am saying that even scenes that you can understand, there's still an added layer of confusion because there's so much that you feel like you don't understand or that you don't know. And it's so alien and it's such a different kind of challenge. And on top of all of that, even the things that you think you understand are actually deceiving you as well, because there's an added layer of everything in this is sci-fi, but it's written to be like a fantasy. So even though you're reading the plot, you could be imagining something because of the words that Gene Wolfe uses, but then you realize, oh, that's a spaceship, that's an alien, that's a gun, and it wouldn't sound like that to you. So there's so many layers of confusion here, and there's so many layers of disorientation. Some of that you'll catch on to, some of that you won't. Like I caught on to some of the hints. I figured out that the Madison Tower was a spaceship. That was cool, but I didn't know other things, like the fact that the book took place in South America. Like I didn't pick up on those. I picked up on some of the religious imagery, like for instance the scene with Typhon and sort of the lictor being a callback to the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness, right? So I picked up on that, but I didn't pick up other religious symbolism, right? Like a lot to do with like the torturers and how they're like an inverse of how Severian's like this weird inverse of Jesus, or how the corpse eating. I can't believe I missed this. How the corpse eating is similar to a perverted version of the Lord's Supper, right? So, some of that you'll catch, some of that you won't. But even the stuff that you do understand before even knowing that you'll get answers later, even when you do get those answers, it's still weird, right? Like it's still strange and off-putting. And it's just a bizarre reading experience. I can't quite explain it other than to say it feels like reading a mythological ancient religious text completely devoid of context, and that's what it's like reading it for the first time. I'm sure if I studied the Book of the New Sun as someone studies the Bible, I think they're very comparable. I can understand why there are people who study these texts and really dig into them. Honestly, when you listen to podcaster streams and the way the people who study this talk about it and talk about interpretations and studying the text, it sounds like somebody talking about a religious text, like an old ancient document. So here's again how I'd like to explain it. So let's take this argument, the idea that you can just understand the basic plot and read it for that on your first read through and get the stuff later. Here's why I don't think that always holds up. So there's this story in the Bible early on in Genesis where these two angels are hiding in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Lot is hiding the angels in his house. The citizens of Sodom and Gomorrah, I can't remember which one they're in, they know that the angels are there, and they want to go. And they go to Lot's door, and they bang on the door, and they say, hey, let those angels out so that we can know them. If you know, you know. And Lot goes, no, don't accost or assault these angels. I'm protecting them. Here, I have these two virgin daughters. I'll let these out to you if you don't harm these angels. you read that story and you can understand what I just told you is understandable, right? That's like, you could read it and know what's happening, right? And the decisions the characters are making, sure. But you're also sitting there going, what? It's such this casual little story that has so many implications and messed up layers to it, and you want to know, hold on, wait a minute, what? Why is Lot doing this? Are his daughters okay with this? Are the angels okay with this? Do the people outside know this? Why is this so like normal? How is this not explained? There's so much weird implications there. Like, like so many questions you have, and yet, sure, I can read that story and understand what's happening, but I also don't understand what's happening, right? Because it's so alien and weird and foreign, and it's so not expanded upon or explained at all, and you never get an answer, right, for those questions you're going to have if you read that story in Genesis. So that's what reading the Book of the New Sun is like a lot of times. Like, yes, I understand that Severian did this certain thing with Yolenta in the garden, but what? Like, what's going on there? Why? Like, what does that mean? Why is nobody acting like you would think they would act in the situation, right? Why are the people around him not reacting properly? Why is Yolenta acting this way? Why is Severian acting this way? Because I thought he hated her. It's like that. It's very similar, right? That's what it's like. Like, yes, I am understanding the rote mechanics of what's happening, but I don't understand anything else beyond that. I don't understand the character motivations. I don't understand what's going on. If it's a symbolic thing, I don't get the symbol, right? So that is what reading it is like. And that's why I kind of like to push back a little bit. That, like, yeah, sometimes the adventure story narrative is enough, but a lot of times it isn't, to be honest. And I think people are giving the basic story a little too much credit because there is so much. And then usually when you try to go find answers online, usually you'll hear things like, "Oh, it's symbolic for this, this, and this," and it's like, okay, that's cool, but like that scene with Severian and Yolenta is like really horrifying, actually. And like, what on earth is like what? Like, tell me in the story, like, what's happening there. You know what I mean? So it's bizarre. It's bizarre. Yes, you can read it your first time through, and yes, sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't. But I think, and sometimes the adventure story thing is true. Like, I think most of Sword of the Lictor is actually pretty. I think that's pretty spot on. Like, I think Sword of the Lictor hits that right, nice, sweet balance between a lot of subtext and symbolic and religious imagery going on in the background, but actually a very compelling narrative journey story on its own that you could just read as a journey adventure story, and that would be enough. Like, I think Sword of the Lictor is true, but I think for the other three, the other four, I don't think I would go that far. I don't know. Maybe Earth of the New Sun has a little bit of that too. Like, the first half, I definitely felt that way. But I don't think it's true for all of the series. I mean, Claw of the Conciliator and Citadel of the Autarch are really confusing books to read. And the story is so weird and disjointed in both of those books. I don't think that holds true. There will be some things when you finish Citadel of the Autarch and Earth of the New Sun that you will now understand enough to be able to read that. But even still, I still think there's so much left unanswered. And luckily, there's a lot of podcasts and streams and in-depth breakdown videos that you can kind of go and you can kind of search that out and study it for yourself. And that's really cool. And I've enjoyed that experience. But yeah, I kind of just want to say that, like, I do think there's something to be said that the first read is almost a wash and you kind of just have to get through it so that you can do the reread. Now, the thing is, I haven't reread it yet. So I don't know. I haven't had the supposedly transformative experience that one has when you reread the Book of the New Sun. So maybe I might read it and it will be this transformative experience, or maybe it won't. I don't know yet because I haven't reread it. I wanted to get these thoughts down before I did that because I do kind of want to push back that a little bit. Do I think that means you shouldn't try to read it for the first time? No, I think you should absolutely read it. In fact, something that I want to point out here at the end is as confusing and rambling as my thoughts are here, as strange and sometimes off-putting as the book is, even while it was challenging and confusing and hard, and sometimes I felt angry at certain things happening in the book. What's interesting is that I never for once wasn't compelled by the reading of the book. I always wanted to keep going. I read the first four books really quickly, and I am still listening to podcasts and streams, dissecting and trying to figure out how I think about it. And I've been thinking about the books ever since I finished them. So as tough as this first read through experience is, and as hard as it is, it's still compelling and it's still engrossing and it still sticks in your head. And so despite all of these things, I enjoyed my time reading it, and I am excited to reread it again and hopefully have a better understanding. But that first read through it's pretty weird. It's pretty tough. And, if you don't have any experience reading something like this before, like a religious text, like I don't know. The Failures is the closest thing I think I've read that's kind of similar to this in the way that it's kind of challenging at first. If you're not used to that kind of thing, this is going to be super weird and disorienting and off-putting. And I think you should just be ready for that personally. I think, I, I don't know what it'll be like reading this thing completely blind. I knew a little bit about it, and still I was kind of floored all the time. So I don't know. I do think that some people are giving the book a little bit too much credit for that first read through. I think the first read through is harder and more challenging than some people give it credit for, but that doesn't mean it's any less captivating or engrossing, if that makes sense. So I was captivated by the book. I did enjoy it, and I am excited to reread it. But man, some of those parts in Claw the Conciliator, man, I was struggling. I was really struggling to figure out what the importance of it was. And for a lot of people, that's the fun, that's the draw, right? And I think for other people, they want more of a basic story as opposed to work, which is sometimes what this feels like. And I think I'm somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? So I did enjoy it. It was a unique experience. Do I want all of my books to be this way? I don't think so, but I'm certainly glad I read this, and I'll be interested to see what I feel like upon the reread. To wrap this up, I guess let me give some like generic review thoughts again, if you want. If I were to rank the books, I would say Earth of the New Sun was my least favorite. I kind of stalled a little bit at certain points in that one, and it took me much longer to read than the other four books. Followed up with Claw of the Conciliator, then Citadel of the Autarch, then Shadow of the Torturer, then the Sword of the Lictor. I think that's how I would go. Sword of the Lictor at the top. Yeah, that would be my first read through experience. Earth was a little bit too long for me. I liked the shortness of the other books. I liked the conciseness of those. Earth felt a little bit too indulgent at some times. And Claw and Citadel had some of the most confusing sections that I'm still not sure what's going on there or why there are certain things in there that are in there. And Shadow and Sword of the Lictor are the ones that are easiest to understand. And I think Sword of the Lictor was just actually Sword of the Lictor is one I would say was just actually a super fun one to read, both on the basic story premise and the some of the other the subtext and stuff that I felt like I was picking up on in that one. I really enjoyed that one. There was a lot of good scenes and character moments in that one. So Shadow of the Torturer, I really enjoyed the first half. And the second half, I struggled a lot. But once you get this contextualization at the end of the Shadow of the Torturer, that second half makes a lot more sense. And so that put that book way up in my estimations. I will say, if the Shadow of the Torturer didn't stick that landing and explain certain things that were going on in that first book, I would have been really nervous to continue. But I'm glad it did, because it instilled in me a sense of trust in Gene Wolfe that the rest of the story would make sense, and it mostly did. I also had a lot of help clearly from streams and podcasts like the Alsba Soup and stuff, and those helped a lot. Samwise has made a lot of good videos that have really helped me piece some things together. And so, yeah, this it was engrossing to read. It was really fun to think about. I will say that, and it was really fun to watch videos about and to just think about and just really chew on. I can see how this would be a really fun thing to buddy read with someone for the first time, to like be working on it together, solving it together. That would be a really fun experience. Unfortunately, I was just by myself with the people on the internet. So that's how I felt about reading for the Book of the New Sun for the first time. It was challenging, it was hard, it was often off-putting, but it was fun and engaging and engrossing and captivating, and I'm still thinking about it a couple weeks later. So clearly, that's got to count for something, right? Anyway, until next time, guys. See ya.